Meghan spent her birthday completely alone. No Harry in the frame, no Lily, no Archie. Just her, a rope swing, and a bunch of balloons in black and white like she was styling her own loneliness. But that is just the opening story tonight. As ever, apparently just got demoted to one sad little shelf in a Los Angeles store. Amanda Plato has a warning for the king, and a royal author just dropped a claim about how Harry really felt watching William and Catherine fall in love. Plus, Princess Charlotte gave a masterclass in patience today that you need to see. So welcome back, my Royal Rogues. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue. Let's get down to it. So let's start with the birthday post, because something about it has been sitting wrong with me all day. Meghan shared photos of herself swinging out over her own pool, arms up, balloons trailing behind her, and the whole thing shot in black and white, which already tells you this wasn't a candid moment somebody grabbed on a phone. This was staged, composed, and posted with intention. Fine, celebrities do that all the time. But what's strange is what's missing. No Harry standing off to the side with a proud husband smile. No kids in the background eating cake. No friends caught mid-laugh. Just Meghan, alone, mid-air, on what's supposed to be one of the warmest days of anyone's year. And why is she wearing sunglasses? I simply don't understand. Well, whatever. I don't get it. Maybe you have an explanation for this. Now, maybe the family photos exist and just didn't make the carousel. That is possible. But when you build a brand around warmth and connection and community, and then your one big public marker of the year lands on a solo trapeze act with a balloons for company, the optics do the talking whether you mean them or not. So this is a woman whose entire public identity got rebuilt around togetherness. The dinner parties, the friendship bracelets, the we language in every caption, and on the one day that's actually about her, the frame is empty except for her. So somebody in that household has an Instagram strategist, and I have to assume they saw this before it went up, which means either nobody around methane thought to say, maybe put a person in the shot. With AI, perhaps, but no, nobody was around to ask. So either read is unsettling, and it's the kind of image the Sausage Squad usually spins into. She's just free-spirited and doesn't need anyone. Which, sure, if you say so. But compare it to literally any other year's of birthday content from this household, and the absence stands out. Did you go back and look at how these birthdays used to get documented? Group shots, Archie's little hands reaching for cake, Harry somewhere in frame with that besotted look he used to wear for the cameras. That entire visual language is gone this year, replaced by one woman, one rope, and a sky full of balloons that nobody else seems to have been invited to hold. And here's the part that makes it land differently than a normal solo post. Solo content works when it's framed as strength. A woman standing on her own, celebrating herself, no apology needed. But this wasn't framed that way. It was framed as whimsical, playful, almost childlike. The kind of shot that usually gets built around a crowd cheering someone on. So strip the crowd out and keep the choreography, and what you're left with looks less like independence and more like a party that never quite happened. It's very depressing, in fact. So we will leave it there for now, because there's more happening with this family's business ventures, and it's not going great either. Speaking of which, as ever, just took a real hit. And this one's not a speculation. It's happening in a store you can walk into. According to reporting out this week, Meghan's lifestyle brand has been downsized to a single tiny shelf inside a major Los Angeles retailer. after previously getting a prominent front and center display. So think about what that means physically. Somebody walked into that store, looked at the sales numbers, and made the call to shrink the footprint. So retailers don't do generous placement out of loyalty. They do it because product moves, and when it stops moving, the real estate goes to something that does. So this tracks with everything that we have been hearing about as ever, traffic numbers cratering over the first half of the year. The jam that once sold out in minutes now sits on a shelf nobody has to fight through a crowd to reach. And remember, this is the brand that was supposed to be the sustainable one, the one that would outlive the Netflix deal, the one Megan herself framed as ready to stand on its own once the streaming money dried up. So standing on its own currently looks like standing on about 18 inches of shelf space between somebody's protein bars and their olive oil. So the team around this brand keeps insisting the fundamentals are strong, but shelf space is not a vibe. It is a decision retail buyers make with actual data in front of them, and right now that data is telling a story the press releases aren't. Well, there is a wider pattern hiding inside this one shelf as well. This is a brand that launched with the full weight of a Netflix partnership behind it. The kind of distribution and marketing muscle most lifestyle startups would kill for. And once that partnership wound down, the promise was that As Ever had built enough of its own audience to keep growing without a training wheels. A single shrinking shelf in one Los Angeles store is not exactly the picture of a brand that's found its footing on its own. It's a picture of a brand that's been quietly triaged, given just enough room to say it's still on the shelf without the space that would suggest anyone expects it to move. Well, let's get into something with real teeth, because Amanda Plattle went off this week and she wasn't holding back. Her column laid out a blunt warning to King Charles about what's being described as Harry's latest demand, essentially arguing that if Charles caves to whatever's being asked here, it would amount to a betrayal of the people who have stayed loyal to the institution. Plattle's framing is there's a squalid, calculated motive sitting underneath this particular ask, dressed up as reconciliation but actually engineered for something else entirely. So I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what's being negotiated behind palace doors, because none of us do, but the language in that column is doing something interesting. It's not attacking Harry directly so much as warning Charles about the cost of indulging him again. And that is a shift worth noticing, because for years, commentary like this focused almost entirely on Harry and Meghan's choices. Now we're starting to see a second front open up, one aimed squarely at whether the king himself is being played. Platter's argument, in so many words, is that every time Charles extends an olive branch without conditions, it teaches Harry that the demands work. There's always a next ask waiting behind the current one. So whether or not Charles reads it that way is a different question. Fathers are fathers. I have said that in other videos, even when they are also monarchs. But the fact that a columnist is now framing this as a test of the king's judgment rather than just another Harry story tells you the public patience for unconditional forgiveness might be running thinner than the palace realizes. So what's notable is how specifically Plattle zeroes in on motive. She's not arguing Gingerbread doesn't deserve a relationship with his father. Plenty of strange families find their way back to each other and nobody begrudges that. Her argument is about timing and leverage. The idea that this particular demand is arriving at a particularly convenient moment for Harry's own interests, dressed up in the language of family healing, because that packaging is harder for the public to push back on. Whether that's fey or cynical probably depends on which side of this you were already standing on before you read the column. So, but the fact that it's been framed as a test Charles could fail, rather than a private matter between a father and a son, tells you exactly how much scrutiny this next move is going to get. And speaking of patterns that run deep, here's one that goes all the way back to before any of this started. A royal author has made a claim that's been circulating hard this week, arguing that Harry actually resented watching William and Catherine's relationship develop, describing it as a slow burn romance that took years to build into what it became. And according to his reporting, that resentment wasn't a passing mood. It was something that lingered, shaping how Harry saw his own place inside the family 4 years afterward. So think about the timeline here. William and Catherine met at university, dated on and off for the better part of a decade, broke up, got back together, and built something that had actual roots by the time they married. Harry, meanwhile, was cycling through a very different kind of public romantic life, one that got dissected by tabloids in real time without the slow, protected runway his brother got to have. If this reporting holds up, it suggests that gap wasn't just noticed by Harry, it actually got under his skin. And look, I get why that would sting. Nobody enjoys watching a sibling get the version of something you wanted for yourself. But resentment toward your brother's happy relationship is not the same thing as being wronged by your family, and it's worth sitting with that distinction because so much of the reconciliation narrative around Harry gets built on the idea that he was the one who suffered unfairly. So if there was jealousy simmering that early, before any of the well-documented later conflicts, that reframes a lot of what came next. It suggests the fracture wasn't only about press intrusion or palace politics. Some of it may have just been about watching his brother get to fall in love and peace. It also puts a slightly different light on everything that came after. The memoir, the interviews, the recurrent insistence that William got treated differently growing up. He got the 2 sausages. Well, if the seeds of that grievance were planted watching a courtship rather than watching a coronation, then the entire framework of this pair versus the heir starts to look less like a structural complaint about the monarchy and more like an older, more personal ache dressed up in institutional language. So, William and Catherine, for what it's worth, never had to manufacture their story for anyone. It built itself slowly out of the public eye, which is exactly what made it durable. So that is not a dig at Harry. It is just a very different starting point, and apparently one that never stopped mattering to him. So all right, let's close things out on something that actually made me smile today, because not everything in this family is a mess. There is a photo circulating of Princess Charlotte sitting beside Prince Edward, and the composition of it is doing, well, fantastic work here. She's got her chin resting on her hand, eyes locked somewhere in the middle distance, this completely unbothered, almost thoughtful stillness on her face while the world buzzes around her, and she's not performing to the camera. She's very attentive to Edward. She's not fidgeting the way a kid usually does when they're stuck sitting somewhere for a while. She looks like she's actually processing what Edward is saying at that moment, and that is so great to see. That kind of a stillness is rare in a child of that age, and it's the sort of thing that sticks out precisely because it's not staged. Nobody choreographed a candid moment like that. You can practically see the gears turning behind her eyes, that quiet, watchful quality that shows up again and again whenever cameras catch her off guard. Edward, for his part, looks completely at ease, sitting next to her, talking to her, and the kind of relaxed body language that only shows up between family members who actually enjoy each other's company. Oh, there's no performance in it, no stiffness, just two people comfortable sharing a moment. So it's a small moment, but it's the kind of thing that quietly does more for this family's image than any orchestrated photo call ever could. You can't manufacture that look on a 9-year-old's face. So either it's there or it isn't. And on this particular day, it very clearly was. So here's where we land tonight. One household is producing solo balloon photography and shrinking retail shelves. Another is fielding warnings from columnists about what happens if forgiveness comes too easy. And somewhere in the middle of all of it and all resentment about a slow burn romance might explain more than anyone's given credit for. So I have a feeling we haven't heard the last of any of these threads, especially the Platel piece, because that is the kind of column that tends to shape what happens next rather than just react to it. So let me know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue. Much love and bliss.